I'm going to come from the point of view, like we all know some basic information about solar, but I think the best way to look at this is in three parts. The first part was to look at some recent changes with the Inflation Reduction Act, which have made it so very attractive for nonprofits to go solar. The second part would be to look at a case study, and I have Tim's permission to look at our father's house. So when Tim was working with his board, then we presented this proposal. So we can go through that proposal, and then there's a more generic proposal that I've got, which is just a one-pager, and that will allow us to introduce all the major concepts. So the goal is today is just to kind of fill in some of the blanks that you might not know about solar and to get you thinking. And then let's just have a discussion. That sound good? Okay, cool. So let me share my screen here. Let's see here. Here you are. Share screen. Okay, can everyone see that okay? It's
looks great.
Okay, awesome. So it's on my left-hand side here. I might look a little, let me try to move it over here so I get it. I'll look like I'm not paying attention. Okay, so this is and I'm happy to provide this as well. I'll go ahead and send this off after our meeting, but this is a summary of the Inflation Reduction Act that everyone's familiar with it and they've heard a lot about it. It's $369 billion. And the primary function of it is to reduce energy usage in the United States. It's globally very, very strong leadership position for the United States. The industry has embraced it and applauded it. So what it means for us here locally, primarily is it's a residential, commercial, and nonprofit. It addresses all of those. And it addresses the energy from a conservation perspective as well as a production perspective. I'll focus on solar, obviously, for today. But it was passed in August of last year, of August 30. So it's only, what, 4.5 months old. Some of the provisions in here, so it was a policy that passed. So you can't actually go to the websites right now of say, the Department of Energy and download, what does the form look like where I applied? They're still playing catch up, and it won't be till probably mid this year where you can do some of those you can download some of the tax documents, et cetera. But the policy passed, it is a law. And from a solar perspective, the most important thing it did was extended the tax credits. So I know you all probably know what a tax credit is, the difference between an expense and a credit, but I always like to reiterate, think of it as a coupon off your tax bill. So it's a dollar for dollar coupon. In the past, up till this act, any nonprofits, municipalities, et cetera, were out of luck. They didn't get the tax credit because obviously they don't have a tax bill. So what this act did is it says, okay, so you don't have a tax bill, you're a nonprofit, we're going to be able to reimburse you the same percentage that for-profit institutions have, but in the form of a direct payment. So instead of a tax credit, it's going to be a direct payment. And it extended those out. Even the tax credits were scheduled to go away in a couple of years. It extended them out to 2032. So this was a great shot in the arm for the entire industry, because then financiers can say, oh, if we take on this project and we're not done for 6 years, we're still going to be able to get the tax credit. Or if you're a manufacturer, you're telling yourself, oh, this is going to promote solar for the next 10 years. So let's go ahead and invest and build a factory, or various other things. So it really was like stability is what the market was looking for. And so this set the pace. So it's a heck of a lot of money. $370 billion, as I mentioned, 369. So, but it was the type of thing that we all need to look at from a financial perspective to be able to have a long-term view on energy development. And of course, as we're all church members, to do what's right, for God's earth. So it was a great thing that happened, and that's why it's been cheered, not only in the States but also around the world, because the United States, everyone was looking to the U.S. to please help us lead through this. So the most important thing it did is it extended the tax credit to 2032. And then, as I mentioned, it allows all forms of entities to be able to participate in that benefit. So it's 30%. So it's kind of like a 30% coupon from a church perspective. It's like a 30% coupon off your system. So it obviously increases the return on the investment greatly. They also have raised, they put provisions in there that allow you to get more than 30%. And everyone was like, wow, that's like icing on the cake. So it's for community projects, solar projects, which some of you might be familiar with, especially in the communities where there's not a lot of land, but you can subscribe to solar. It allows community solar to really take off in the United States. Or let's say accelerate, it's taken off, but to accelerate its path. So for systems that are community solar, you can get 10% additional to the 30% if you're using domestic content. What that means is, and again, these rules have to be written out, but essentially the policy is saying, if you buy made in America equipment, or a certain portion of that has to be manufactured equipment, you can source some things from abroad, but you can get an additional to 30%, you can get an additional 10%. And then if it's in a site that was heavily, let's say coal mining sites or hazardous waste sites, that can be where you can put solar on top of it without endangering people, then you can get an additional 10%. So you can use that land, put solar, arrays, solar fields on it, get additional 10%. It also has a lot of LMI focus in there. So if you're a low income community, then you can get an additional 10%. And if it's a residential building product, so like an LMI residential building project near a brownfield with domestic content, you can get 70% of it paid really from of the system. And then you're looking at 3 and 4 year payback. So this is really helping a lot of LMI, but as well as other areas which have been underserved, let's say. What else to focus on here? So REAP.
Your slide does not match what you're talking about. You shared the screen and it quit showing us what you originally put up.
Okay, thank you for telling me. Does that do anything?
Now it's there.
Okay, good. Thank you for not letting me go on and on.
Well,
scratching your head. So this is what I'm going to send to you. So this is the documents. These are the tax rates that I was just talking about: 30%, 40%, 50%. So you get up to 70% of your project paid for. So from your perspective, sitting in your seat, you're thinking about doing it for your houses of worship. Then I would bank on 30% right now, just because nothing's been spelled out. I would imagine it's going to be pretty easy to meet the domestic content, because there's still quite a few, like a lot of the racking systems, which are the mounting systems that solar goes on, are already made in the United States, and we haven't seen any shortages of that yet. Panels, there's good panels that are made in the United States. So I think if you want to risk it a little bit, you could say, okay, about 40% of our project will be rebated to us in the form of a direct payment. So, but beyond that, low income, it's so murky right now until we see the specific rules. I would just hold off on that. And obviously you'd want to try for it and watch that space, and it would be great to have. But from a financial perspective, I'd look at 40%. I'd feel comfortable with that. Let's see. So there's also $1 billion to REAP. Now REAP, which is this here, could be interesting for you if you're in a community that's a rural community. So it's a rural energy access program, I think. And so I'm not sure where everyone's located, but if you go to the REAP site, then they have maps and it says whether you're REAP. Now, pretty much all of Southern Maryland is, for example, just to give you an idea. There's just one municipality, I think, that's not considered REAP, but so it's added funding to a lot of other existing programs. It's up to the funding in them. There's also going to be created a bank. Well, it's National Green Bank. And what it's going to do, it's going to co-guarantee loans. So a lot of other financial institutions are now going to be able to get into the game, because it's kind of like you have FDIC, where, what is it now, $300,000, I think, is guaranteed. If you put your money in the bank, it's guaranteed by the FDIC. That's what this National Green Bank is doing, and it's $27 billion. So the prediction is that that's going to allow up to tenfold, or let's say $300 billion of capital to come into the market, because of the way that the banks and the risk work. But it's going to free up a lot of private capital, or institutional capital, I should say, because it's going to have that $27 billion in loan guarantees from the federal government. So again, there aren't many details on it, but just so you know, if you're beginning to think about solar over the next couple of years, yeah, I'll say even a year, you're going to see more commercial lending opportunities that weren't there in the past. So that's what the IRA did for us. It's allowed nonprofits to get the 30% tax credit minimally. It's allowed other programs to have increased funding, and it's also allowed for other institutional investors to get more active in the commercial solar market. When I say commercial solar market, I mean non-residential, so I'm meaning houses of worship. So this is another shorter slide, but I wanted to mention it because it's an important part of the IRA. It's not really to do with solar, but there is a lot of other parts of the IRA which is allowing you to conserve energy. So you can get rebates on new heat pumps. You can get rebates on insurance. You can get rebates if you need to upgrade your electric service. So there are other provisions in that bill that really help. And this could be interesting for your congregants as well, just to know. Okay. So for the commercial building energy efficient credits, buildings over a certain square footage are going to have an energy score, and they're going to be required by a certain time to come up to a certain score. So if it's, I don't remember I'm trying to remember if I've got it on here somewhere, what size building. There's going to be incentives. I want to say it's 10,000 square feet. So if your facility is more than 10,000 square feet, at some point you'd have an audit, a commercial energy audit, and you get it assigned as a score. And then this would allow you $2.50 up to $5 per square foot to become more energy efficient, and to get up to 25 or 50% reductions. There's also tax credits that you've probably heard with the EVs. A lot of those have been reinstituted. So I just wanted to mention that. We'll concentrate on solar for today. So before I move on to the case studies now, are there any questions about the IRA and what this does?
I guess this is Aaron. I guess I got, and it sounds like there's still a lot to be, or some details to be determined, right? Correct. So it sounds like, so I guess that's a question. And then also, how does that impact timing in terms of, and maybe you'll get into this more, but it sounds like maybe, we might be sort of planning projects now, but not necessarily implementing them quite yet until things get a little clearer, or. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would go ahead and start. I mean, I wouldn't let anything hold you back. If you're a little bit uncomfortable with uncertainty, then hold back. But I feel very comfortable, if I were in your shoes, Aaron, to say, if you wanted to do solar, then go ahead and start and get the contract signed, because it's going to take a while. Typically it takes, for commercial projects, it takes a good year before there's a shovel in the ground, so to speak, because you're going to have site plans, and there's going to be site reviews, and oftentimes that takes 6 months at your permitting. And then the tax credit starts once the system's built. So by the time you have that built, this will all be ironed out. It's still fresh, but by that time it'll be ironed out. So that's why I'd feel comfortable doing it. And the second reason is you have up to 5 years to complete a project. Residential, you had 1 year to lock in, let's say, your tax benefit. But in your case, with nonprofits, you have up to 5 years to complete it. So you could start it in 2023 or 2024, And then you'd have up to 2028, 2029 before it was finished. And the interesting thing to know is, well, no, I'm sorry. I was going to say something about the tax credit that it carries forward, but it's different with direct payment. So I would feel comfortable going ahead and starting as if knowing that until the details get worked out, you've got some time to build your system.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if there are no more questions on that, I'm just going to go ahead into I'm going to go ahead into proposal. So this is the proposal that we did for our father's house. Is everyone seeing V1, our father's house, on there? Okay. So what would happen is, and so this is Tim's church, if you haven't visited before, and it's we would collect the energy bill, and we look at the energy data, and it's primarily comprised of two parts. It's your K, and this is a little bit technical, and I'll just mention it, but you don't need to remember it. It's the kWh, which is how many watts you're actually using. And then it's something called a demand charge, which is, I always equate it to the size of a pipe. So that the size of a pipe is your demand charge, like how big of a pipe do you need going to your facility? And then everything that's running through that pipe, the fluid, if you will, is the kWh. So what solar takes care of is all that kWh. So you can completely eliminate your bill from a kWh, from a carbon perspective. You can become carbon neutral. Like you see in our father's house case, there was a 102% offset, which means that for every watt that they're burning, they're getting that from the sun, essentially. But solar doesn't eliminate that other part of the bill, the demand charge, as I mentioned, because it's just the size of the pipe. You get charged for that whether anything's running through it or not. But it just is important to know conceptually, when you're doing solar, you're only eliminating that fluid in the pipe, but you're not eliminating the pipe. So your bill is not necessarily going to go down to zero. On average, very rough, demand charges can be anywhere from 30% to 50% of your bill, because it depends on how you use energy. If you're turning on everything at once, you're going to get a big demand charge. It's basically a spike, so you need a bigger pipe. Solar is not going to do anything with that. So you have to do other things in your facility from an energy perspective to lower the size of that pipe, and you can do delayed starts on your equipment and not have electric hot water heaters and things like that that are not heat pump hot water heaters. You can eliminate that. You can convert over to LED if you haven't done so already. That will eliminate this. That will reduce the size of that pipe. But solar doesn't eliminate that pipe entirely. So just in summary, there's two parts of electricity, if you will. There's a kWh, solar eliminates that. It doesn't eliminate your demand charges. So what solar companies do is they start to analyze that data, and they'd want access to your utility account. They can't do any harm. They really can't do anything. You can look at it, you can download the data, and that shows what your data has been for the past 10 years. And then the system gets designed according to that data. So that is a highly accurate system that all solar companies are doing. And if you look on this picture here, you're seeing that there's different colored roofs. And Tim's church is a fantastic candidate for solar because it has a yellow roof, meaning that that's irradiance. That's how the sun is hitting that roof. With solar, you want a south-facing roof. And he has a direct south-facing roof. So it's getting a lot of irradiance or energy from the sun. And then you can see on the north side of the roof, it's orange. So it's not a very favorable spot to put solar. So that information is done obviously through a program, and it's all done according to the specific geolocation. So you put your address in there, it highlights the building, and it's all done by LiDAR, which is the kind of like a radar, but it shows the light irradiance. Okay. And then, so once you have that and you can say, look, oh, I want to fill up this, I want to fill up this roof or that roof, or you have to consider aesthetics where you like it. Or you might want to put it on the ground. You can put it on a ground mount system as well, to get direct south. The more south facing, the better. Now I'll just mention here, because it comes up a lot in some of the public areas, people are like, well, can we do our parking lot? And you can, but just know it's going to reduce your return a lot, because parking lot canopy systems are quite expensive. Okay, so this is only like a 4 or 5 page proposal. I'll just kind of run through this, but you can see just on this first page here, there's 102% offset, and then you size the system. Okay, so this is a 60 kW system. That means there's roughly, I'd say 140 panels on this, and that's the solar system size. But depending upon how it's oriented, if it's got a good orientation, it's south facing, it's going to produce quite a bit. So the size of the system, these are probably 370 watt panels. Again, there might be 150 panels. That's roughly the size of the system, but depending upon the orientation is how well is it going to perform, how well is it going to produce. And this system is producing 78,000 kWh. That's that fluid in that pipe. So what this essentially is saying is that our father's house needs about 76,000 kWh per year. This system is going to produce 78,000 kWh per year. That's why there's a little bit more than 100% offset. Okay, any questions on that concept? Just go ahead and interrupt if you want to. I'm again giving you lots of information, just so you can start thinking about it. So when you hear about it the second and third time, it'll really start to make sense. But you need to go through this rough draft first. Now, the reason that you want to oversize slightly to be more than 100% is because the systems do degrade. On average, they degrade about 0.5% per year. So ideally, you'd want to be at like 110%. So then you have 20 years. And if your usage remains the same, then you're still going to be at 100% offset after 20 years. So 110%, that's 20 years. But again, consider aesthetics. And where's your return? I would go with 102% in this case, because otherwise you're going to be putting it on a roof that is not going to give you that good of a return. So you're going to have diminishing returns on your investment. So, but 110%, 105, 110 is a good target offset of what you're going to look at for your place. So if you're doing a ground mount system, for example, that's what I would target, the 110%. Plus, you also need to think of your energy future, which is maybe you don't drive an EV right now, but in 10 years, you'll have some kind of EV, whether fully electric, at least a hybrid, and some of your congregants as well. Now, church isn't really the kind of place where you'd go and you'd want to, charge up your car. So I wouldn't worry about having a bank of chargers there. But if you have 3 or 4 people, or however many people working there, they might want to charge. That could be a perk, and so you're going to see that. But you also need to think about: am I going to replace my HVAC system? Am I going to be converting over to LED or my hot water heaters? What does our energy future look like? That's this getting solar, you should think about that, because again, this is like a 25, 30 year horizon that you're looking at with solar. Okay, so let's look at some of the economics of the system. This system had a 12-year payback with a 7% return. So then you start to think, okay, where can I put my money? Can I get a 7% return in the stock market? Or, it comes down to finance. Besides all of the other issues that we're concerned about, it does oftentimes come down to finance. And how much is it? And then how long is it going to take for us to recoup that money and then be ahead of the game? So that's the payback period. So in this case, it was 12 years, which means in 12 years, the money that they put into the system, they would have gained that money back. But again, you have the system for 25, 30 years, so it's quite favorable. So looking at the total payments, so this system was $160,000. However, there was $97,000 in incentives. And I'm going to go into the other incentives besides the direct payment that I spoke about for churches. There are other categories that you're also eligible for. So in the end, you're really only paying about $62,000 for it. So you're going to pay $62,000 and you're going to save $223,000. So it's a favorable, return on your money. So let's look at how that, so that's just, that graphs that out. At what point is your benefit, it says avoided utility costs, but it's really all the benefits are outweighing the initial investment. And I just want to point out here, you'll see in year one, you're actually saving. So you're putting out $150,000, but at the end of by the end of year one, you're getting a lot of it back because of that 30% tax, because of that 30% of that direct payment. So even though you put out a lot up front, within 1 year, you're getting a lot back. So that's important to look at from a cash flow perspective. This is the summary of that particular location. Again, you've got different incentives. So you've got $159,000 outlay of capital. You've got an $8,900 incentive, and you've got a $40,000 incentive, and you've got a $47,000 incentive. This $47,000 incentive amount is what we spoke about. That's that 30%. And again, it could be 40%, but at least you're going to get 30% as a direct payment. That's where that comes from. Okay. So the other incentive that you can get is from this, well, I don't know if we're all speaking to fellow Marylanders here. I think East Friendship, that's Maryland, correct? Are we Virginia and DC as well?
East Friendship is DC.
Yeah, we've got a mix. Yep.
East Friendship is DC.
Oh, okay. Okay, good to know. So you've got, this is based in the Maryland system, but in Maryland, you have commercial incentives. So the state of Maryland would cut our father's house a check that first year for $8,900. Okay, I don't know, I don't do systems in DC, so I'm not sure what they are, but there's probably similar type incentive from DC for that.
Mhm.
Now SRECs, that's a long, detailed conversation. Are Aaron and Sam and Reverend Helen, are you familiar with SRECs?
A little bit.
No.
Okay, so SRECs stand for Solar Renewable Energy Credits. And that again depends on where you are. But Virginia has them, DC has them, and Maryland has them. They're all very different. In Maryland, the 10-year average is going to be like $39. In DC, it's going to be like $250. So you're in so DC is a great place to do solar. Virginia relatively recently started their SRECs, but they do have them. And they're similar to Maryland's. And so what they are is the utilities have to have a certain percentage of energy coming from solar. So think of it like this. They have two options. They can build thousands of acres. The utilities can build Pepco or Smecca or Delmarva, or Virginia Power can build thousands of acres of solar systems, and then they've got, say, 15% of their energy coming from solar, or they can buy it from people who credits from people who have solar. And that's the route that most are taking, like almost everybody, let's say, I would say everybody's taking. So they're going to pay you because you have solar. They're going to say, oh, we're going to count that as part of the portfolio of energy production that we need to have. So it's a law. So in Maryland, for example, it's 14.5% by 2030. That's written in the law. If they don't have 14.5% of their energy coming from solar, then they have to pay the Public Service Commission. Same thing in DC. So SRECs are here to stay. I believe they're going to be here for 25 years, but I don't know where they're going to be after, say, 10 years. So it's kind of a guess. But the people that I follow and the blogs and the reports, et cetera, that I see, everyone knows that SRECs will be around because we're in dire circumstances. We need to do a lot by 2050. So we believe that the governments are going to push the utility companies to have a certain percentage of their portfolio coming from solar. That's what an SREC is. So as you see, in this case, that Maryland SREC was going to, forecasted over 20 years in this case, was going to pay our father's house $41,000. Okay. So again, in DC, you're going to have, 5 times that amount. They're going to be very attractive.
Okay, well, James, let me speak to the SRECs because I have personal experience with that, and that'll be one of the potentially challenging points for anybody. I personally put a system on my home in 2010 after the first big initiative under President Obama, and I can't remember what they called it, but it was all of those TARP programs trying to save the country. And I put a solar system on, and Maryland had just mandated 10% of all the electricity had to be green electricity. And so initially, the SRECs in Maryland at that time were $300 a megawatt of created power. And I had a 12 megawatt system. And so I was looking at like, okay, I'm shelling out $30,000 and I'm going to get back $3,600 from these SRECs for my 12 megawatts of produced electricity. And it was like, wow, this is a no-brainer. And that wasn't even counting the electricity that I was saving, which was another $1,500 a year. And so I was like, I'm going to have this sucker paid off in like 4 or 5 years. Well, it's supply and demand. You create this high price, and then a whole bunch of people put solar on their roofs over the course of the next 12 years. And so that 300 slowly got down to as low as $5 an SREC in 2018. So it got really low. Now, it came back when Maryland passed a new law that said, and James, I thought it was 20% is their new minimum, not 14%.
14.5 by 2030.
14.5. Well, okay, so they got a new law, and the SRECs went up to $75. So the supply and demand, again, they had a higher requirement, and so they didn't have enough supply, and so the price went up. And so, matter of fact, the proposal we had back in 2020, you had that incentive amount was at $75. Are you saying now that this 40,000 is projected out at $35 a megawatt?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So they have a more conservative value for that. Now, it's not a given. It's all contingent upon market cost. I agree with James that most likely the way things are going, I mean, Maryland follows California. California has a much higher SREC demand or demand upon the utilities. And so most likely in the years to come, Maryland will mandate there'll be 30% or 40%, or even in California, they expect to have 50% by 2030. Wasn't that the insane number I've read?
It sounds about right. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was really high. The pundits I read say there's no way they can do it, but they said it, so they're going to try. So anyway, this SREC number, it's a big question mark. I think I appreciate James only pricing it out at $35 rather than the $75. It could go down over time and then go back up if Maryland makes a higher requirement, just like they've done twice now. And Maryland has a liberal legislature, and they are very green oriented. And so probably in Maryland, those SRECs will go up. DC, absolutely. DC's, it's always been really good, and it's going to continue to be good. Virginia, I don't know anything about Virginia. So I just want to get some clarification on that. I think that's a good solid number. It's just, it's not like 30% credit. That's a solid number.
Mm-hmm.
This
Right.
This is a little bit of an unknown.
A little bit softer. Yeah, I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, go ahead, James.
Okay. So that's SRECs, solar renewable energy credits. And then we spoke about the others. So in the end, you're looking at that 61,000, which is quite a bit less. That's over time. So it's important to look at that as a cash flow. Like, when are we going to get down to that 61,000? And I will outline that. There's this, I think this is the last slide before that. This is just showing you, let me bring that up a little bit. This graph shows you net metering. So this is how solar works. This is from a technical perspective as well. Some months out of the year, and this was particular to our father's house, but you'll have somewhat similar, you're going to be generating more than you're using. And some months out of the year, you're going to be using more than you're generating. So it accounts for that. So when you generate more than you use, think of it as you're putting it in the bank. So you're going to get a credit with the energy company on your kWh. So it might be a $2,000 kWh credit. When you generate 6,000, you're only using 4,000. So then that will be applied to those months where you're running a deficit, which means you're not generating, like during the winter, you're using more because your heat's kicked on. There's the days aren't as long. So, it's a kind of a floating number, and then it zeroes out once a year. So once you go through that first year of being operational, you're going to be building up a credit during the spring and summer and early fall, and that will carry you through the winter. So there will be a point where you're not paying, if you didn't have demand charges, which I talked about earlier, the size of that pipe, you wouldn't be paying for KW, you wouldn't be paying a bill, you wouldn't be paying for kWh. So as I mentioned, I'm happy to send this proposal to you. As long as it's not shared with, with competitors, that's all I care about really. But this shows you how you can get the money back off the system. So here's that $8,900 again. Here's that 40,000. This is just spelled out what those are. And then what you'll see is it broken down by month when you go to proposal stage. And here you can see that this is where I'm talking about the energy demand. So you'll have a current electric bill, and it will show you annually. Our father's house was $10,500, and of that, 5,000 of that was demand. So they have 50% of their bill was not going to be taken care of by solar. So that's why it's important to understand the concept. It can be quite significant. And then there'll be a new chart showing what the projected energy usage is. And then again, so you're down to 5,300. So you're coming from an annual bill of 10,500 to 5,000. So it's cutting the bill in half, but it's not eliminating it. And then those numbers go into your cash flow. So this is where you can really start to understand how's our cash flow going to look. You're going to put out, so the red is, you're putting out that money. So you're putting out 159,000, but then you see in that first year, you're getting $56,000 back in incentives. That's the direct payment, as well as the cash incentives, if you will, from the state, as well as your energy bill savings. So you're saving $5,200. So really at the end of the first year, you've got $64,000 back. You're only going to be down to you're going to be down to only 94,000. And then from that point forward, you're not getting any more payments, direct payments. You're just saving your energy, and you're getting your SRECs. So you can see how SRECs are forecasted out for 20 years on this, but they drop significantly after year 10. So because I feel confident with the numbers of year 10 because they're actually in the law, but then it goes from 2,700 to 1,200. So that's just kind of a guess, but it's less than half. So I feel comfortable with that too. It could be more than, it could be double, who knows? But as Tim said, it's a soft number, so you want to be conservative. And then by year 12, you've made everything back, and then you start accumulating, and so you're $161,000 ahead of the game. So Tim, you mentioned 146. That's it for that proposal. I'd be happy to take questions. I can show another example. But
James, let me speak to two other things. One other positive going with solar, the cost of the electricity, it's gone up dramatically in the last couple of years. I remember they said that to me in 2010, and it didn't. It didn't for like 10 years, but then it did. and the way things are going with such a pressure on the renewables, the non-renewables, most likely electricity is going to continue to be more expensive. Again, look at California. Their cost of AW is like 3 times what it is in Maryland. And so if they are going to get rid of coal, like in Southern Maryland, there's no longer coal produced electricity. They shut it down in Southern Maryland. It's all natural gas and nuclear. So that's probably a positive. Utility rates are going up. We considered that as a factor. Oh, the only other thing to recognize, the system you're putting on your roof, it's not going to last forever. He was saying a life expectancy of 20 to 30 years. So let's say 30. In 30 years, that money-making thing on your roof won't be making any money more, and it has to be replaced. Now, granted, in 20 years, at the rate solar is going, it might be really inexpensive. They'll probably have solar shingles by then or solar paint. Who knows what they'll have, but you'll have to do something. This system doesn't last forever. It's not like money in the bank, which continues to grow exponentially over time. And that was one of the concerns that we had. James, the other question I have that you didn't talk about, what if something goes wrong? What if one of my panels fail? And hey, I got it. My system, Tesla bought my company out years ago. And oh my goodness, I'm waiting on customer service for 7 months from Tesla. Don't buy anything from Tesla. Their customer service is horrible. I don't know how they are on cars. I think Kenneth has a car, but solar is horrible. I've been working with them for 9 months trying to get some parts, and it's very frustrating. So who's going to service these, James?
Well, it's good. Yeah, it's going to be the Tesla is a kind of a unique thing. You have to be an authorized Tesla service provider to be able to service it, which other companies are, Tim. So we are, by the way, for your system if it's broken, and that's we hear it all the time, and we service a lot of those systems. But it's the installers in your area will service them, and there's different guarantees that come with the system. There's a performance guarantee, which says that after X year, you're going to be at this percentage of output on that panel. So that depends on which panel you have. For example, this was Silfab panels you saw. They have a 30-year performance guarantee. So they're guaranteeing after 30 years, you're not going to be less than 82% of its production. So that's a manufacturer's performance guarantee. But then they also have a 25-year product warranty. So if anything happens in 25 years on that particular panel, then that panel gets replaced. But you still got labor costs. You still got the actual people to come out and do the replacement. Also, some solar companies that I've come across have been do a 1-year workmanship warranty. So we guarantee for a year that we didn't put a hole in your roof improperly or that kind of thing. But if, let's say, 4 years down the road or 6 years down the road, something happens, then there will be labor costs associated with that. But yeah, various people can service them.
Okay, good.
It's also important to note on the service side that you'll have a monitoring system. So I'm not sure if it was around when you put your system on your house, Tim, but the systems now, you can pull it up on your phone and it's by panel. They get mapped out with little barcodes. And then you can see, oh, this panel and this corner and that row is underperforming by X percentage. And it will send you an alert. Hey, something's going wrong. So they're actually standalone. You don't need to do too much monitoring of them. You don't need to do any maintenance of them. You just need to fix them when something's wrong.
As long as the interface is working. And that's what's failed. And I haven't had an interface for 9 months. I don't even know what my solar panels are doing. And they keep failing one by one. So anyway, that's my problem. I'll probably talk to you, James. Maybe you can fix my broken interface. Because Tesla is big. Oh, I'm not going there.
I have a love-hate relationship with them too. I
Me
love their
too.
cars and hate their solar.
Yeah, exactly.
James, I got a question for you. I think you've sort of answered this, but it sounds like there's been this is quite a different model, especially for nonprofits and those who don't pay taxes than in the past. It's not, because my understanding in the past is, nonprofits didn't have access to this except through, what was it called? Like a purchase power or something, where basically we're kind of renting them, right? So the for-profit could take the, the credit, and then you kind of get that through a rental. So it sounds like that's kind of, maybe that's still a possibility, but it sounds like that's not the only way anymore. We can do these directly now.
It's a very good point, Aaron. So what we used to do, and actually when we first started talking to Tim, this is what we proposed, was called a tax equity partnership, where somebody else owned it, and then you agreed to buy the power from them. When this law passed, those went away, and everybody breathed a sigh of relief because they were complicated deals. They were IRA compliant and all, but they were complicated. So those went away. However, you mentioned a power purchase agreement. That's still a viable way to go. It's because it's the same thing. They'll own it, and you agree to purchase it for them. It's not as financially beneficial as if you own it, but power purchase agreements are certainly still around.
Okay, but it sounds like we have this new option of owning it outright.
Right. Yeah. It's more attractive if you can own it outright. You have to factor in obviously your borrowing costs, but if you can own it outright, that is my strong recommendation to do.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
A lot of the plus, and one other consideration there, Aaron, is for the power purchase agreements. Oftentimes they won't do anything smaller than like I think their minimal that they're doing. They've come down a bit, but it used to be a $500,000 threshold. So now some of them are getting more into, so it's coming down to like 250,000. So they won't even touch it because of the paperwork that's involved. And if it's less than 500,000 typically.
Okay, thank you.
Question, just a quick side note. You had mentioned charging stations. Do you all, are you directly able to assist with that, or even maybe indirectly by referral?
No, we do a lot of charging stations.
You do?
Yes. Now, when you're saying charging stations, you're saying for your use, right? Not to make money off of with other people.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. For our use, yes.
Yeah, they're not very complicated. It's just a 50 amp circuit out to wherever you want to be.
Okay. All right. So I think in your email, in our email, a notification regarding this meeting, your contact information may be in there, I believe.
Tim, did you include that? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but it definitely will be when we send you all my proposal. It's right here on the front. It will be on that proposal, so you'll have all the contact information.
Sure.
Yeah. And again, I will vouch for James. He's a brother in the Lord, and they did us very, very well with our LED project. We had some problems, not with what they did, some bad bulbs, and we had things fixed, and we were able to get it all worked out. And so having confidence in the company is a huge thing, and I have really good confidence in them. We're just not ready to pull the trigger yet.
So question, James, do you do work in DC or Virginia?
Virginia for sure. Yeah, I'm not in DC.
Okay, great. Okay. Any other questions, anyone? Well, I guess not. So.
Okay, well, my contact, thank you, Aaron, and my contact information will be there. Feel free to reach out whenever. And I understand you guys have some business items to take care of, so I'll say goodbye for now. And thank you for your time.